Hey, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Expert. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have nearly 40 years of experience at NIH as an applicant, a bench scientist, a staff writer, and now as a full-time grant editor and mentor. I've helped clients land. We're actually in the process of updating the number, and it's closing in on $700 million in federal funding. And I'm here to answer your questions. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So, as I said, feel free to start putting your questions in to the Q&A box. Um, in terms of what you should be watching right now, it's March 18th. I would imagine that everybody who is doing a resubmission is now done, and we're all kind of shifting gears and looking ahead to the cycle two deadlines, which are in June and July. So if you are targeting cycle two, particularly if you're in the R and K series, I would hope that you are done with some of the prep steps, that you have done your due diligence in searching the NIH database through the reporter website to, see where you might fit in that database and what an optimal um, NOFO and institute and study section might be. So in terms of the library, hopefully you have watched, like in Master the R series, hopefully you have watched chapters 1 and 2, which are the prep and specific games portions, and have now moved on to chapters 3 and 4, which have to do with writing the research strategy. So today we're going to do a mini tutorial. So I know a lot of people here are new. There are people here coming from some new organizations. So just to let you know, sometimes I have guests, sometimes I do mini tutorials, sometimes it's a pure Q&A session. Today we're going to do a mini tutorial on expert tips for writing career development awards, which is the K series. Part of the reason that I am doing this mini tutorial is because I just updated this portion of Master the K series course. So for those who don't know, my Master the K series course is actually in 8 chapters. So it is a very difficult mechanism to master. And unfortunately, it's often the first one that people write. So what makes it hard is that you're doing a research strategy very similar to what you would do if you were writing something in the R series. But on top of that, you're also doing a candidate section that has various components having to do with your career development and your mentoring plan. And you have mentor letters and RCR section and all different sections. So it's like doing an R series application times two. It's like that on steroids. So it's a very steep learning curve for people who are doing this. So for those who don't know, Master the K series, the 8 chapters of that, the first 4 are identical to my Master the R series course, where we talk about writing the aims page and vetting your idea in the reporter website and writing the significance, innovation, and approach sections. But then where the Master the R series course ends at the end of chapter 4, we move on to 4 more chapters in Master the K series. So chapter 5 is on an overview of the various K mechanisms: K01, K07, K08, K22, K23, K99, R00, and others. These are just some of the more commonly seen mechanisms. Chapter 6 is on writing the candidate section specifically. Chapter 7 is on all the letters that you have to write, the letters of your mentors and co-mentors, the mentors from your collaborators, the institutional support letter. There are a bunch of different types of letters. Some of the mechanisms require reference letters, some don't. So there's a whole chapter just on the letters. And then the last chapter, chapter 8, is on mistakes commonly made on case submissions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the some of the things that I ask people when they come to me with an idea for a K project. So first off, I want to point out that I always ask somebody's early stage investigator status expiration. So for those who don't know, the ESI status is a funding advantage that is conferred on applicants who are 10 years or less from their terminal degree or from their last clinical training. So like if you're a clinician and you've done like a clinical fellowship, your clock starts at the end of the clinical fellowship, not when you got your degree, your last degree. And you have not been a PI on an R01 or equivalent. So, and just so people understand, you don't lose your ESI funding advantage if you land an R21 or if you land a K, for example, or an R03, nor do you get a funding advantage on those mechanisms. It only pertains to R01. So you lose it if you're a PI on an R01, and it's a funding advantage only on an R01. And the funding advantage varies from institute to institute. It's hard nowadays to nail down what the funding advantage is, but often it can equate to as many as 5 percentage points. So if your institute funds R01s up to 10%, they'll fund their ESIs up to 15%. So if you score 15% or better, then you're in the competitive range for funding. You would be considered for funding. So and there are institutes that give an even juicier funding advantage. Some of them will go up to as much as 10 percentage points. Some will be lower. They might be like 2 or 3 percentage points. But 5 is pretty typical, 5 percentage points. And that's a significant advantage. So part of the reason that I ask people when they're coming to me about a case submission, part of the reason that I ask about their ESI expiration is because most career development awards, which are the mentored case series at NIH, tend to be about 5 years, and you're locked down in your percent effort to it can vary from mechanism to mechanism, but it's usually somewhere around 75%. And it can vary, it can be less if you're like in a surgical field or invasive cardiology. Sometimes you're allowed to do a little less percent effort so that you could have more clinical time. But typically 75% time that's pretty typical. And you're not eligible for a release in that percent effort until year 4 of your 5-year award. What that means is that you're not even eligible to apply for an R01 in the early years of your K. So I hate to see somebody, spend 6 months to a year writing a case submission. They wait 9 to 12 months to get their answer back. They haven't gotten funded, so now they're going to resubmit. They're going to, they get their summary statement back. They retool the submission, put it in as a K resubmission. Maybe it takes them 6 to 9 months to do the resubmission, write it. Then they wait like another year to get an answer. And then finally, after several years of pursuing the K, they get funded and they have a start date, and then the clock begins to start, and it's another 3+ years before you can even apply for an R01. So you can see where if you are pursuing a K, it's going to gobble up a lot of your precious ESI time. So that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do in some circumstances, particularly if you have like lots of ESI time yawning out, you have like 6, 7, 8 years of ESI time. Then applying for a K might be great. But if you have like 3 or 4 years left on your ESI clock, I really prefer to get, or even 5 years, I really prefer to get people applying in the R series and skip the K. So even if you don't have enough preliminary data and publications to be competitive on an R01, I'd rather see you put in a small format R like an R21 or an R03, which is a 2-year award, and it will get you eligible to apply for an R01 more quickly. So that's one thing to think about when you're considering a case submission. The other thing is that I find that most applicants who come to me with an idea for a case submission, they come with a project. They always start with the project. And this reasoning to me seems quite backward, even though I think it's pretty typical that people start with the project. That's usually where your mentor has begun in their logical flow about applying. So the reason that this is backward to me is that when you're thinking about a K, typically what you want to do, and let me also dispel the misconception that Ks are always geared toward junior faculty, because they're not. They're career development awards. They're mentored career development awards, and there are some that are geared to people who are mid-career or later. So, for example, there is a key mechanism that is geared toward, for example, engineers who have typically submitted grant applications to like NSF and are looking to break into biomed, and they want to start to transition their portfolio or build an additional set of projects where they can apply to NIH. So that is a type of career development award that's geared toward mid-career. There's one for people who want to become mentors, more senior people who want to become mentors. So it's like mentor the mentor. So it's not just early career people. So, but most of the mechanisms are in fact early career. So I'm going to speak to that since that's what most people come to me with. So I will say that when you're thinking about, if you're early career and you're thinking about a K, typically what you want to do in terms of how to conceptualize your training goals and your project is to think, what is my vision for my independent research career? And when I think of what that vision is, what are the knowledge, what is the knowledge that I'm missing to realize my vision of my independent research career? And that could be a combination of like skills that you lack or expertise or training or coursework that you need in a specific area, for example. And that's how you begin to think about your training goals and building your training goals from there. And people's training goals could be anything from, I've seen people with 2 training goals. I've seen people with 7 training goals. And your training goals are going to be things like, general statements about skills that you want to develop, like, it could be something like developing skills in learning how to run clinical trials. It could be something like learning taking coursework in immunology. It could be building technical skills around a certain area, immunocytochemistry or whatever, imaging or building some expertise in data science or things. They tend to be broad and general. So when you're thinking about your candidate section, there are 3 parts. The first section is going to be about your training to date. And the second section is going to be about your goals. And those are your short and long-term goals. And then the third section is, and you're going to talk about, the second section is really when you say, this is my vision for my independent research career. I have these skills that will contribute to that vision. And here are the things that I lack when it comes to realizing that vision. And here are the training goals that my committee and I have devised to help me fill in those last pieces of mentored training that I need to realize my vision for my independent research career. And then that third section of the candidate section is really where you go into the weeds of like, okay, let's say I have 3 training goals, and one of them is to develop some expertise in data science. And that's where you talk about, I'm going to take this short course. I'm going to do guided readings with this advisory committee member. I'm going to, one of the aims of my project is going to be like the learning lab for my developing this skill set. And you talk about like seminars you're going to attend, courses you're going to take, and you might do a stint in somebody else's lab to learn certain skills. So, and then from that, you are supposed to devise your project. So your project then becomes the learning lab essentially for your training goals. This is the place where you're going to apply the skills that you are learning through your training goals. So In general, this is the best way to design your case submission, the idea for your case submission. And unfortunately, what winds up happening typically is that people come in with a project, and the project could just as easily be an R21 or an R03. And from that, they kind of reverse engineer their training goals, and the training goals often wind up sounding kind of contrived and they don't fully make sense. And I can always tell when a person has started with the project and not with the training goals. So you are going to have to write the project the way I described, where you're going to have to say, this is my vision for my independent research career. Here are the skills and knowledge and expertise that I have. Here's the little bit that I still lack. From that, here are the training goals my committee and I made. And from the training goals, we developed this project, which has typically 2 aims, maybe 3. And that will become the way that I bring the knowledge that I get through my training goals to practice. This is where it comes to bear, and it becomes the place where I work with my committee to really develop those training goals. In addition to all these other things, these courses and seminars and guided readings and other things that I've done to enrich my learning. So anyway, those are some thoughts that I want to leave you with, and I will encourage you, if you are a K applicant, I've just updated in January chapters 5 through 8 of Master the K series. There are new samples in there. I really have a lot of sample language in each of those sections, so I would encourage you to take a look at that. Okay, any questions on this little K mini tutorial? I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. These mini tutorials are just kind of like an appetizer to the course. So you get a sense of like the kinds of tips that you're going to get in the course. So let's see. Somebody's asking, does ESI status also help when applying for an R21 grant? No. So ESI status has nothing whatsoever to do with the R01. You will not have that funding advantage on the R21, nor will you lose it if you land an R21. And Alexander, I'm going to hold your question for a moment because I want to screen share because I'm getting a lot of questions like that from people who are new. So I'm going to screen share something to show you, but I just want to answer the K related questions. So Riley, please leave Alexander's question in there as a reminder to me. For K Career Development Awards, are you ineligible if you are an associate professor tenured? I don't think I have ever seen eligibility described that way. So there are like the K99R00 has a specific time period, I think that you're eligible, but really for the other ones like the K01, K20, K08, K23, I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen that described that way on an NIH website. I feel like no. But having said that, if you are already tenured, I don't know why necessarily you would be applying for a K, because typically the K is a, like these types of Ks. So we're not talking about like the mid-career Ks, Preeti. I think we're talking about the earlier Ks. Those types of Ks are usually the thing you use to help land your tenure track jobs. So these are the kinds of things that typically come into play earlier in your career. So I don't know if there's a strict eligibility cutoff, but I don't know what would be the wisdom in terms of your approach to grantsmanship and building your grantsmanship portfolio to pursuing a K if you already are tenured. So all right, let's see. That's not a K. I'm just skipping over the ones that are not case specific so we can keep the K discussion going for a moment. So Riley, just so you know, I'm skipping the first few. Your K project also needs to results in peer-reviewed manuscripts, correct, on top of skill acquisition. How many manuscripts is expected from a 5-year K grant? So, um, that sounds to me like you're asking about two different things. Like, do you need manuscripts to have a competitive application? And then the application should result in how many manuscripts? So I'll answer both of those. So the answer is yes, you have to have the it is true that you are not going to be competitive on a mentored K award if you do not have a first author publication with your primary mentor in the field in which you are putting in the K application. That is a fact. That is not written anywhere, but I can tell you, having looked at probably a couple of hundred summary statements over the last 20 or so years, that I can't think of a single instance where a person got funded without that being true. And I can think of dozens and dozens and dozens of examples where reviewers said, you got to come back when you have a publication with your mentor. So yes, it sounds counterintuitive, but even though you're applying for funding to develop expertise in an area, you are going to have a first author publication with your primary mentor in the area in which you are applying for funding. And then the other question, how many manuscripts is expected from a 5-year K grant? So I get asked this all the time, and I'll just give the same answer I always give. It varies wildly from field to field, whether, like you're going to be expected to have a couple like people ask, like, how many publications do you need to be competitive on an R01? How many publications should an R01 result in? How many publications do you need to be competitive on a K? How many publications should a K grant result in? It varies wildly from field to field, and you really have to, talk to your primary mentor and colleagues to see what is typical for your field. So you have some sense of that. If you have more than 20 first author publications, are you not applicable? Is this not applicable for a K? So this is the same person who was asking about the tenured award. And again, it's not written anywhere that, like, if you have that many first author publications, you're not going to be, a K is not right for you. But it's sounding to me like you're further along in your career than one might expect you to be for that kind of a mentored K award. And I kind of worry that if you even though there's like no eligibility cutoff for some of these types of Ks, I worry that reviewers are going to say, why are you applying for a K? You're already established. You have tenure. You've got all these first author publications. At this point, if there's some expertise you're missing in terms of your vision for your independent research career, instead of looking to create that expertise via a K mechanism, what you might want to do is look for a collaborator who has that expertise, and then you can partner with that person, and they can do that part of whatever the expertise is that you feel like you're missing, because it seems like you're kind of past the point in your career when a K would make sense for you. And this person is saying, I never had a tenure track faculty role. I feel I lack many skills that are basic. Well, maybe then if you have a mentor, have a conversation with the mentor about this, and a conversation with a K program officer about it, and go through the exercise of thinking, when I think about my vision for my independent research career, what skills do I have and what skills and knowledge am I lacking? And then make a list of what those skills and knowledge and experience are, and then talk it over with a mentor and a K program officer, and see if it would make sense for you to pursue a K, if that would make sense for you. So, okay, any other K questions before we move on? Let's see. Okay, it doesn't look like there are more K questions. So I am going to, one of the first questions here is, this is my first session, so I apologize if this has been addressed before, or if this is not the right forum, but I would love to hear your tips approach to the new Biosketch format. So we actually just did a mini tutorial on that. In fact, the person who gave that mini tutorial is actually on the call right now. So what I want to do, and this is like a general piece of information for everyone, if there is some topic that you would really like some knowledge on, the chances are I've already either presented a mini tutorial at this session on it and or written a blog post on it. So what I want to do is share my screen so that I can show you. If you log into your dashboard, your course dashboard, everybody who's on this call live has a membership to my course memberships. And so all of you have access to a course called Bonus Mini Tutorials. If you don't remember how to log into your dashboard, Riley has put the Thinkific login URL in the chat. So, and if you forget you should have signed up with your institutional email address, your .edu address. And if you forget your password, it's easy enough to reset it. But you all have access to this course called Bonus Mini Tutorials, which is literally just, not only do we record at these sessions from start to finish the full hour. So if you wanted to watch the whole Ask the Grant Writing Expert sessions, the recordings are on your dashboard. But if you just want to look at the mini tutorials, we've cut those out. We've edited out the mini tutorials and made a separate course just for that that's searchable. And this is what it is. It's the bonus mini tutorial course. So you can see I've been giving mini tutorials since 2022, which is when we started these live sessions. And you can either go in by year, or the easier thing is to search by lesson title. So you can kind of come through here and look at the topics, just peruse the topics. So this is just the introduction here, this little thing that I wrote. I just did one on the human subjects and clinical trial form. I did one on resubmissions, and here's the new Biosketch format. So you can come in here. Oh, and my session expired, so I can't show it to you. But anyway, it'll take you to the video clip of the mini tutorial and Ask the Grant Writing Expert. The other thing that you can do for a lot of these things, I have written blog posts, or somebody on my team has written blog posts. So if you come to the homepage, bouviergrant.com, that URL is also in the chat right now, and just come to the blog post. The blog is searchable. So you could come here, right? Here's the blog post on the Biosketch. So there's information there with hyperlinks to more guidance. But if you don't immediately see the topic you're looking for, like people have been asking me a lot about the R34 lately, you could do a search on that. And here is a blog post I wrote on clinical trial planning grants, and you can kind of scroll down and get other topics where I've mentioned an R34. So those are two places where you can go to search for short topics that you're not finding in the courses. One is the course dashboard and the bonus mini tutorials. You can peruse the topics there. And the other one is this blog post. And often there's information in both places. So Alexander, we just did a mini tutorial and a blog post on the Biosketches, so you can look in either of those places or both of those places if you like. Okay, have you seen R01 grants focused on secondary data analysis be successful? I understand an R03 is more typical for secondary data analysis projects, but I'd like to leverage my ESI status while I can. For example, a project that fits well topically within a special PAR and combines multiple large data sets. Relatedly, have you seen R01 grants? Well, let's answer that first. So the answer is yes, but it's not very typical. So what you would want to do do is ask a program officer at a relevant institute if that's going to be of interest to them in their R01 portfolio. And you can explain it's multiple large data sets. The big button to push when you're having that conversation is that you are leveraging an existing government investment in these data sets. So what you're saying to them is, look, because often these data sets have been paid for, like the development of the data sets were paid for by NIH or some other US federal agency. So if that is the case, what you can say is, you guys already invested all of that money up front to create this database. Now, the most cost-effective thing to do is to leverage those data in as many ways as possible. So I want to potentiate your existing federal investment in these data sets by doing a secondary data analysis on these large data sets. So you're kind of pushing the cost savings information there. And then if you can really push hard on the significance of the kind of information you would get by querying, by doing a secondary data analysis on these large data sets. Those are the two things you really want to push hard. And it might not be a 5-year grant. It might be a 3 or 4-year R01. So, but I would have a conversation with the program officer at the relevant institute to make sure that that would be of interest to them as an R01. Relatedly, have you seen R01 grants that evaluate policies be successful? I've seen a few of these, but it's unclear whether they were in response to a specific NOFO focused on policy. Um, so I'm not exactly sure what you mean by policy. So like there obviously, like some people do there are different types of agencies outside of NIH that might look at policy. So like AHRQ and PCORI sometimes will look at like those kinds of projects. In terms of policy, if you're finding something in the NIH database that is somewhat close to what you're thinking of in terms of policy, look at the institute that funded it. And if that is an institute that would be a good fit for you, again, mock up a set of specific aims for your project and have a conversation with the program officer, because it's not really relevant in this. If it's something unusual like this, it's not necessarily relevant that NIH sometimes funded it in the past or has never funded it. What you really want to know is, are you interested in funding it now? Is this something that would be of interest to you now? And in terms of policy, if you can show, again, cost savings and efficacy, in terms of whatever the policy is, that's like that's always successful language, right? But particularly with this administration, that's going to be a good button to push. So that's what I would say about that. All right, let's see. Anecdotally, I've had colleagues who had Ks that were poorly reviewed, with the primary feedback being that the individual and their research program is too mature and not appropriate for the K mechanism. So this is in relation to Preeti's earlier comment where they felt like, and I've seen that too, where they feel like it's a tricky window that you want to hit, because you can't like apply for a K with like absolutely no expertise in the area. You have to have some expertise in publication in the area, but you can't be too far along, because then the reviewers are going to say you should be applying in the R series. So that's something to think about. But it's hard to answer these kinds of questions in a vacuum. And it's really, you need somebody with subject matter expertise, and you need to go through the exercise, Preeti, of like, these are the specific skills and expertise that I feel that I'm lacking, in order to realize, and here's my vision for my independent research career. Would a K be appropriate in this instance? Let's see. So this person is saying, following up on the ESI question for the R21, my R21 would not receive any special advantage from ESI status, correct? That is correct. So ESI is irrelevant in the paradigm of R21. You don't get a funding advantage, nor do you lose your ESI status if you land one. In that case, would it be better for me to submit an R01 instead of an R21? Well, that depends, right? So it depends on whether you have enough data to be competitive. I'm currently an instructor at UT Southwest. Oh, I shouldn't say that. And it recently submitted the CATS Early Stage Investigator Award with support from my PI and department chair. Am I eligible to apply for an R01 as well? Well, you can apply for an R1 if there's overlap in the science with what you put in the CATS, because at NIH, you can't have the same science and review at two places at the same time, with a few very minor exceptions like center grant applications and R1s. So if there's overlap scientifically with the CATS, you can't submit it. If there is not overlap, NIH doesn't have any rules about your being an instructor or tenure track or not tenure track, or they don't care. As long as you can demonstrate the appropriate level of expertise and your organization is willing to sponsor the project and your organization is willing to provide whatever you need to carry out the project in terms of like space and core facilities and tech support, et cetera. So as long as your organization is willing to do what they need to do to sponsor the project, NIH has no eligibility requirements when it comes to your career stage when applying for something. The question of whether to apply for an R01 or an R21 would really depend in part on how much preliminary data you have and when your ESI status is expiring. So if you don't have a lot of preliminary data and your mentor doesn't feel you'd be particularly competitive at the R1 level, you might want to put in an R21 and hopefully land that to use that funding to generate more preliminary data to make you more competitive at the R01 level. So an R21 is often used as a building block toward the R01. Having said that, sometimes people's ESI status is about to expire, and if that's the case, even if you know that your R01 is not going to be competitive, sometimes I have people put in an R01 application just as their ESI status is expiring, less as a Hail Mary pass and more as a way to allow them. There's this quirky rule that if you put in a first submission R01 and A0 just as your ESI status is expiring, so like let's say you put in a June 5th R01 and your ESI status expires on June 10th, then if that June 5th submission is not funded, as long as you resubmit within 13 months, the July 2027 A1 resubmission is also reviewed as an ESI. So it's a way of buying yourself another 13 months of your ESI status. So it's really going to depend on a lot of very specific things in your situation, So those are just some of the things that I would ask a person about when having a conversation like this and advising them about whether to do the R01 or the R21. Okay. Any thoughts on the RXIV publications for K awardees? I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. Let's see. What else is there? I know, and there may be a typo in there. I know this is not directly a K question, but for my clarity, I am really grappling as to which to pursue by the June deadline because, as you know, I will lose my ESI status by the time I hear anything for the K. Is there an ESI payline advantage for R21 applications? So again, no. ESI does not exist in the R21 paradigm in any way, shape, or form. So you don't have. ESI only pertains to R01. It doesn't pertain to anything else. You don't get a funding advantage on other mechanisms, nor do you lose your funding advantage if you land an R01. So there's no funding advantage whatsoever on an R21, for whatever that's worth. I think it's important to have prior publications using the federal data sets, which are very complex, even if it is secondary data analysis. Yeah, so this is somebody I think who's commenting to the other person about the R01, can I put in a secondary data analysis about large existing data sets at the R01 level? And this person is making the very good point that sure, but you've got to have some publication. I mean, in the R01 world in general, you're going to have publications and lots of preliminary data on whatever you're proposing. So yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. Those are preprint servers. Yeah, preprints don't really help you, but remember that, so this is what I think this is pertaining to my comment about you need to have a first author publication in the field in which you're proposing with your mentor when you apply for a K. One thing that I want to remind people is preprints aren't really going to help you in that scenario. And I don't even think you can report them as publications in any NIH format. You can mention them in the narrative of the personal statement and of the biosketch, but you can't list them preprints as publications, I don't think. I'm pretty sure that's not allowed. But I do want to remind people that you can put in publication updates as post-submission material. So there's a window of time from the point of upload of your grant application to grants.gov until 30 days before the study section meets, where you can put in information in using the post-submission material policy. So you can only upload information once and it's limited to a single page. So I usually encourage people to upload it like 32 days before their study section meets. But one of the main things that people use that mechanism for is to update their application in terms of publication information. So if you have something in press and it's not yet published, you could put it in, you could let reviewers know in the post-submission material mechanism, which buys you a few more months after you upload for whatever that's worth, if that's helpful. Let's see. What if the preliminary data for R21 is aggregated summary statistics rather than patient level data? Does that matter? Does it matter in terms of being competitive on an R21? I mean, that's not primary. If you're doing some sort of analysis of that information rather than just aggregating it, then that would be considered, I think, appropriate for an R21. But again, you should probably talk to the program officer about it. But you have to be doing something with it. It has to be like primary research, So I would check with the program officer on that one. It's really, you're going to have to, it's very hard to answer these questions as a non-subject matter expert when somebody's giving me one sentence. It's really, I wish I could give you guys more information. But it's kind of, I'm like trying to answer something in a vacuum from a person where I'm not like a subject matter expert. So in most of these instances, I'm going to suggest like mock up the aims and check with the program officer and see what they say, or ask a mentor about it. Let's see. What if at the time of application, the first author publication is still under review and not published yet? Does that count? No. That's not good. On the K. This is somebody who's still asking. It's the same person asking about the K. Yeah, that's not going to help. So you really have to have it in press. So sometimes I have people put the K in anyway because the odds of landing a K on the first submission is low. And sometimes you kind of like put the application in as a learning experience to get a sense of how they're going to react to your training goals and how they're going to react to your project and what do they think of your advisory committee. And, with the idea that most of the time, statistically, review panels are going to expect you to revise and resubmit. If the timing is such that you like really need to put the first K in so that you can get a second K in so that you can stay on your timeline to be able to apply for your R01 in your fourth year of a 5-year K and still have several years on your ESI clock. Like I usually build out like a whole timeline with people. If that's kind of what you're trying to accomplish, then you could put in your K with something where it's in preparation, but it's not reviewers are not going to be like, oh well, it's under review, it's in preparation, it's like under review is meaningless to reviewers. Honestly, I think on some level we all know this. We don't want to think that that's true, but unless it's in press, there it doesn't really count for much. So. Okay, any other questions for me? So while I wait to see, we have a few more minutes. While we wait to see if anybody has questions, I will say that the next two live events, there's going to be an Ask the Grant Writing Expert 2 weeks from today at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to have a mini tutorial on the R35. I get lots and lots of questions on the R35. We've done a lot of tutorials and blog posts on the R35, so if you're like just jonesing to get some R35 information, you can go look at the bonus mini tutorials course or check our blog. But NIGMS, who has the biggest portfolio for the R35, the Mira R35, they have their NOFO out for new investigators and established investigators, and they have for the early stage investigators, which is the single biggest R35 portfolio. NIGMS ESI R35 is the biggest of the R35 portfolios. They have released their intent to publish that NOFO. So we were hoping it would be out before April 1st, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. But anyway, that is our next mini tutorial. And then Friday, April 3rd is the next First Fridays where you can come to me and it's like open office hours. We don't record it. There are no guests. There are no mini tutorials. It's just a pure advising session. You can drop in and out virtually. I enable people to speak and we talk through your issues. If I submit an R01 with a senior PI as a co-investigator, will my application still retain ESI status or will it lose the ESI consideration? So you're mixing your terms. Senior PI as a co-investigator. Are they a PI or a co-I? So just so we're clear on the terms, a principal investigator is the main person who's running the project. And if there's more than one of you, it's a multi-PI plan at NIH. Co-investigators are not PIs. They're team members who are key personnel who have a major contribution to the project, but they are not PIs. They're co-investigators. So if that senior person is truly a co-investigator and not a PI with you on the project, you won't lose your ESI status. But if you opt to do a multi-PI plan, if you and somebody else are a PI on the project, unless you both have ESI status, the application will not be considered with the ESI funding advantage. So sometimes you'll have two ESIs who will pair up and put in a multi-PI plan, and that's fine. Your project will be reviewed as an ESI, but you can't put that senior person on as a PI with you and get your ESI funding advantage. They have to be a co-investigator. And let me tell you, if they have a major role on the project and you give them a really significant percent effort and you call them a co-investigator, reviewers will see right through that ploy. So don't do that. They truly have to have like a lower percent effort and have some kind of described role on the project that is commensurate with a co-investigator status and not a PI status. So NIH seems to accept citing preprints. Okay, so this is a person who has Riley, if you could grab the URL in the Q&A, I think you can see it. So this person is saying that NIH does you can cite preprints. I'm not sure where. I I'm assuming that you mean in the Biosketch. So for whatever that's worth for the person who asked that, there's a URL that's now in the chat for NIH accepting preprints. For K awards, our first and second and last author publications count similarly, or first author is weighted more? Well, obviously, first author publications are always weighted more in any format, but for sure, if you are putting in a K, you have to have a first author publication with your primary mentor in the field in which you're applying. I don't know how to say that more clearly. There's really like, it's just that is just based on my experience. I've seen it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. First author publication. So, I mean, you could be last author and your mentor could be on it, but if you're a last author on a publication, again, you're starting to get into that more senior level where now it's going to be a situation where reviewers may say, like, do you really need a K? Like you're more advanced. Second question, full original paper versus short papers counts similarly for K award competitive applicant determination. So all of this is just like, this stuff isn't codified and written down somewhere. This is just what any given reviewer reacts to, So like there are hundreds of study sections and thousands of reviewers, and reviewers even from session to session, depending on their mood, may respond differently. So, like obviously full original papers are going to be more impressive to reviewers in general than short papers. But at any given time, would a given reviewer accept a short paper if you're the first author and your primary mentor is on that paper and it's in the field in which you are submitting the K? I don't know, put the application in and see. That's the only way to find out. Like we're kind of like splitting hairs about like, it's not as if I can just give you like hard and fast information about like that kind of thing. You're just going to have to try. So, yeah, here's somebody saying, thank you for being so patient with my naive questions. I can guarantee you whatever question you have, somebody at some point is going to either be on this live stream or watch a recording of it and have the same question. So any question is a good question. So somebody's going to have the same question. So, okay, so we have just like 1 or 2 more minutes. And again, I'll just repeat that on April 1st is our next live Q&A, and the mini tutorial is for the R35, and April 3rd is the first Fridays. Okay, and the sign up for that is in the chat. Let me just see. I thought I saw another thing come in. Okay, here's a person about that preprints. So a quote from the page that the URL again is in the chat. The quote from NIH is, interim research products can be cited anywhere other research products are cited, though it states that you have to check the specific DOFA for diverging guidelines. Okay, so it should be okay to cite preprints. So. Okay, I think that's probably it for us today. I look forward to seeing some of you at our next live events on April 1st and April 3rd. If you have questions in the interim, you can feel free to email them to me. I'll answer them on the live stream. If you just find it easier to send them to me ahead of time, no worries. I'll still answer them on the live stream. So you can email me directly at meg@bouviergrant.com. And otherwise, I wish you all a great week. As the French would say, courage. And I'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.